I feel like probably a lot of people read through this chapter the same way, where it's like, you have a degree of things you're like, oh, sweet, I can't wait to see this transpire. And then, things that you have an idea of, like, okay, yeah, for sure, this is gonna happen, or like this is gonna go down. Oh yeah, I see this happening. This makes sense due to connecting X, Y, and Z. The bit at the end, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. There's still only really one solution, at least off the top of my head, that I can think of, and we'll get to that once we actually get to the end portion of the chapter. But the the chapter really began exactly where you'd figure. It's got Natsu right after his punch on with the Ignia. Ignia seems unfazed. There was a bit. I'm just pulling up the chapter right now. There was a bit that was really interesting once Ignia pushes Natsu back, and the flames around him are really dark. And Natsu comments about, like, something being up with the fire. And again, that's another thing that is intriguing, is that he's noted two members of, well, obviously one is Ignia, so it's not like that one's really that surprising. But with Lekka having fire that is alien to him, something that he's not able to really kind of deal with directly, at least off of, like, his base kind of situation. Obviously, if you give Natsu enough time, I'm sure he could adapt to this type of fire. But it's the fact that even he can't do it right away. It makes you think, okay, well, what's up with this? Why is this fire, a big deal? What about this is going to make it, a shock when we find out the reveal, or what exactly Natsu's problem is going to be trying to go through it. I've had the theory for a while that Lekka isn't human the same way, which can vary now given the chapter, because we did have a bit in this chapter. I'll talk a little bit, because obviously I want to connect the 2 points. But I really liked Ignia in this chapter, and I want to talk to just his conversation in general, because like just his dialogue was really good. But he's saying how the Dragon King Festival is, as said, it is a big amalgamation of this big chaotic storm of humans and dragons, and all of the humans here are prepared to go to that dragon world. Now that line is very interesting, because you can interpret it, maybe all of the members right now that we know of in Fire and Flames are human. Maybe some of them are human. I really like the idea that they're very mixed. Oh, hold on a second. I'm getting a call right in the middle of this. I swear, people know when I'm doing stuff. That's when they know how to call. But the idea that they're not all human, or maybe they are all human, it's the idea just that there's a cross between the species and understanding, and where the goals meet is, again, one thing I really want to know what exactly, like, the plot is going to be with that, because I think with the differences between groups, even if they have similar goals, it's like, oh, the Dragon King Festival. Like, okay, yeah, you can have Acnologia and Futuro going on about that, but I think it really works more into ideas of such, and you have this idea of the Dragon King Festival. Let me see if I can turn my lights down. I got like just the brightest screens up right now, humanly possible. Um, Also, real fat, just because if people wonder why I haven't been around this last like week or so, I mean, I will show you these freaking cats. My I left one of my cats alone. If anybody saw me on Twitter, and then like it was like just a few days ago, my cat gave birth to 3 kittens. So I got 3 small tiny cats back there. They just started opening their eyes today. If the video gets 35 likes, I'll grab one of them in the next video, and you guys can say hi for a second if interested. They're cute. But anyway, I'm getting distracted by cats. But Ignia is like talking obviously about the dragon world and about what his plans are with this. I've had ideas for a while that part of his plans and everything is going to involve turning humans into dragons. Because unless there's like a time travel thing that brings the dragons back, or like with the whole like transmuting history where it's going to alter events, the only other solution I can think of where, oh yeah, they're going to bring the dragons back, is using dragon slaying magic to force accelerate, turn humans into artificial dragons, so you have that addition of the species in the verse. That's the only thing, again, I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are other theories and stuff that make sense. But I know to me the idea of just like, yeah, you force kind of induce dragon force and the dragonification process onto a bunch of humans, probably pretty good. I mean, like I would imagine like you get one person at least turned into a dragon, that's going to be around for a while, just because there's not a lot of people that can contend with them. And you get more powerful just by becoming a dragon, not even involving any of the other variables into strength. It just seems to be like being a dragon makes you more capable, as we saw with Irene. I mean, obviously we've seen other cases, but like that's just the best one of going from a high enchantress to a master enchantress. But with the whole idea of like these guys not being fully human, I think it makes sense with like you have Brian with all these weird mouths on his body, which could be a magic, but we don't know. Lekka having fire that is odd to Natsu that he couldn't just, eat it as we saw. And then the Signario sisters just have a very strange kind of presence around them, like there are secrets to be revealed later on about like their origin, their backstory, and who exactly these two are. Cat just wants to lick my feet right now. But I really liked the panel where Ignia is talking about it, and you see all these silhouettes of different dragons. I'm very curious as to if those designs are foreshadowed, like it's not just silhouettes. Because there's two specific designs in here that really catch my eye. One is the one that's like right in the middle. It has horns similar to the design of the fire dragon once we were originally introduced to them from Elefsarian. We had just the silhouettes of them. And I think that one's just cool because that would be really neat to see like that make some form of turnaround, whether it's Ignia turning into that dragon, maybe it's Wed or Lekka, who knows, maybe it's like, oh yeah, I decided against Ignia having the design, but I wanted to reuse the design because, well, use the design because it's never been used. And then the one directly to the left, I'm trying to remember because I want to get Ignia's side. It looks like it has two heads. I'm guessing if that's one, that's going to be the Signario sisters, where they like fuse into one person, maybe. Like, cause like some of these, I would like to believe, at least just off of guessing, that some of them are of like an idea of like what the plan is. Like maybe that one with the really smooth neck, like right to Ignia's right, is gonna be Brian, where Brian's gonna have the mouths on him. I don't know. It's just out of my head, just what I'm kind of trying to think about. And then like right afterwards, we have like this beam of dark light just rain down directly on top of them. And this is what I was talking about. Like the first, everything other than this part of the chapter fits into what I would be like. Yeah, it makes sense. Like I was actually thinking about doing prediction chapters again, and it's funny because like I said, majority of this chapter, I'm very confident I could have been like, yeah, I have an idea of like just based off events, this and this can happen, and I feel like at least these portions of the chapter would align with um what exactly happened for the most part. And then this dark light is just the strange wrench thrown into the big mess of things. And at first, like you just see the silhouette, which is really cool. I don't know, it's just a really cool like scene setter. Oh, people are calling me. One second. Okay. Yeah, luckily I actually remembered to put my mic on so I don't like unpause the recording and then talk for like 5 minutes of dead audio. But we see like the silhouette, and I really like it's just like she just kind of starts talking in full assumption already in the conversation. Like, oh, a festival of humans and dragons? That's not quite right. Obviously, you need Black Wizard in there. Makes me wonder because like I understand obviously the idea of the Dragon King Festival in concept. It's once the Black Wizard got put into like the requirement of things is where I'm wondering when that exactly happened, because it makes sense, this big massive dragon chaos, because humans like Dragon Slayer dragons are both technically human and dragons because they're still human at a core, but they're also dragons. When you get down to the technicality of it, it just kind of really varies with them. But it's just I don't know. It's such an interesting little setup right now. But anyway, the whole bit after that is like we go and it's Wed and Urza, and obviously Wed still wants to start fighting, but he knows that once the Dragon King Festival starts, that he doesn't think that it's going to happen. And then we have Misfortune, and she's like sees the light come down, and she's like saying how like, oh, it's starting. Oh, that's completely something else, which again was really neat in the middle of the chapter because you feel like you're going with the motions, and then you're like, oh, who's this character? And I thought it was like, oh, maybe it's a new dragon, maybe it's a new character popped up, maybe it's one of Celine's kids. Who knows exactly what it is? There's all these question marks in there that make you go, oh, maybe. Who knows? And then once obviously we get to this point and Misfortune is very uncertain about it and shaken by it, that's when you know, oh, well, this is not planned. This isn't something that they have intentionally going on. This is something outside of everything, which I really like. I really liked Rebellious as an existence in the verse because I like that there are outside sources that will come to clash with what you would expect. And I like that with Diablos a lot too, but obviously now Diablos are allies, so we can't have them the same way. And with Fire and Flame, though they're the direct enemy right now, they are who we, we're dealing with, who we assume is what we're going to be dealing with. So once we, jump from them and we see, okay, now we have this, Ferris and what's going on with, to what extent we don't know, it just really kind of throws you out. It's like, okay, well, now it's a third party in here. Well, what's going on with this? Also, I really liked how Happy instantly was like all simping for Misfortune. I think that's just kind of funny that like Happy's life so far is like he's either simping or somebody simps for him. Like he just has like a very that very rough cat lifestyle, I guess. But also it makes me wonder because I thought maybe Misfortune was a fire type creature that took the shape of a cat. But just based off of Happy's interaction, I'd be willing to guess more that she is a cat using fire magic. Who knows? Maybe it's kind of like how you have Era, then you have Aqua Era. Obviously, Aqua Era is different, actual magic and stuff. But which I guess kind of, I don't want to get into a rant about Era right now. But then you could like maybe Flame Era, and it's like, oh yeah, your wings give you a flame thing instead. I don't know. And Wed too. I really like how Wedge decided to walk away after that. He's like, shit, he at that point he's like, okay, I got to put my duty above my wants. I thought that was really cool. And before I get to the bit about Ferris, I really wanted to talk about the beginning of the chapter because I think that this is very overlooked. When Natsu asks him, he's like, "Are you really Ignia's kid?" And Ignia says, like, my dad is my dad, and I'm me. This is really crucial. I'm gonna do a video on this later by itself, but this is like a really big like foil bit for Natsu because this is similar to how Natsu. It's like when you're talking about like obviously with Acnologia, how they talk about like the bad dragon stuff. Natsu looks at them as individuals because he knows that it's not a thing about species. It's more of like an individual's choice of whether they're going to be good people or bad people. Are they going to do X, Y, or Z, which is going to be beneficial to certain whatever people, or are they going to do stuff that's detrimental and negative and like a danger towards those around them, kind of thing. And I really like that he's just like, when he's like, are you really Ignia's kid? He's like, yes. And how he was how he was. How I am is how I am. I am not dependent on how my father was to determine how I'm going to be. I thought that was really cool. You don't need like a long, deep explanation of like what his intentions are when he says this because you know what it means in context to the story. You know about the whole bit of like obviously Natsu talking with the personification of Ignia when he was in that comatose state in the later portions of Alvarez before getting back up. And you can say the same thing about Beta Heaven, like anything about like Natsu's whole journey about like him being himself and it not being like, are you a dragon? Are you a demon? What are you? What are you? Are you a member of Fairy Tail? Are you Zeref's brother? Are you the destroyer of everything? And it's just like, I'm me. Like I'm Natsu Dragneel. Everything that encompasses that is me. I don't need to be defined by specific things because everything about what makes up me is defined by me. And I really like that. I think that's a really good bit again for Ignia that humanizes him very strongly. Because like that, and then the bit with him obviously directly saying humans, because we don't know exactly again if all of the members of Fire and Flame otherwise are human. Some of them human, some of them non-human. At least as of right now, you can kind of put a question mark up there. But I mean, a dragon working with non-dragons, and then on top of that, like the way that he speaks, it's just it really gives you a lot of tell on how he operates, how he views things, and clearly how he conducts himself. Because like even now, he's not acting like, oh yeah, these guys are my pawns, like they're fodder, they only work for me because they're scared of me, kind of thing. It's like, no, these guys are all prepared to go with me. They want to live in this world. And obviously there's still a lot to see, but I really liked what we're getting right now. And I mean, like Ignia starting a Dark Guild was already really cool, but it's like everything forward of that has just done really good for his character without having to be like, all right, this whole chapter is about Ignia, and we're gonna see Ignia talking to himself and looking at a sad memento that relates to his mom or something, or whatever things that you would like have to really pull out to get like a deep dive in a character. And that's one of the things that I've talked about is like a really big advantage of Ignia as an antagonist versus relatively any other antagonist right now in big battle shonen, adventure shonen, is that a lot of Ignia's character you can connect and unroot and figure out from stuff with Natsu and Ignia, because a lot of Ignia clearly is made to foil and counter that, and I think that's just done brilliantly. I really like it. But as it were, I keep getting these cat hairs in my mouth. I hate having to do that just because I don't want to have to keep pulling hair out there in the video, but it's like I can't have that stuck in my face because all these damn cats. But once obviously Ignia is like, questioning who exactly this person is that showed up, doesn't know what's going on. And then there's like, talking about like, a year ago the Dragon King Festival happened, and there's a requirement of a black wizard because you need a black wizard. And again, that to me is like makes me wonder, because like, is there an additional thing about the Dragon King Festival we don't know about? Is the black magic itself a requirement? Is there something in there that really adds into it, or like maybe personifies it, like maybe like just further hardens it to increase the severity of its influence? I don't know. But as it were, she shows up, and it ends up being Ferris. And I know some people are like, oh, Ignia's sweating. He's got one sweat drop, and he's way more. Let's see these cat. He seems way more like he's just shocked. He's just more surprised. And I really like Ferris's like cool Nun of Death design. I really just like the cool dark roses, the general black motif. Her hair looks bigger. Her like hair drills look just generally bigger. And then on top of that, she has like Acnologia's like little pattern bits at the bottom of her dress. Now, I talked about how exactly does this work? So if this was just Ferris and it's Ferris return, and Ferris is like clearly evil of some kind, manipulated or whatever the case is, the question would be like, well, what's going on? But like specifically, we already given that she feels like Acnologia. So what does this mean? What exactly does this entail? And I've had the idea for a while that a plot item that it doesn't need to show up, but I feel like it does, and that's Acnologia's arm that was taken by Ignia. Because if it was just like his arm's gone, we never really need to see it again. There's no real point or need to it. There's two specific things about that, technically three, that I like how it's like three and I did like 4 to 5 fingers. 3 things specifically. One, and it's probably the easiest one, not the easiest one, the one I want to spend the least amount of time on, I guess, is that once Acnologia died, his physical body wasn't what was in there destroyed. Well, his physical body was out there, but his spiritual body died in the space between time. So after assimilating with the bit, he ended up being destroyed in there. So I've always had the idea, it's like, well, if a being like that and then destroyed in a dimension like that, is he really destroyed? What exactly happens to him? It's just one of those weird things where it's like, because of the level of like fiction on top of fiction, that to get to like that crazy outrageous point, yeah, we're fighting in a hole outside of space-time reality after this guy ate it and then broke through reality like glass. Like, there's just so many things of like fiction powers and stuff in that you can say like, well, that could lead to something. The other thing, I mean, just the fact that, I mean, two are kind of like one thing, and that's, like I said, the arm. Acnologia's arm didn't need to be a thing, but I think with the introduction of the Dragon Eaters, it just left the question. It's like, okay, so you're telling me that if somebody just found this severed arm and ate it, they would gain absurd power.
absurd levels of power because you'd become a 5th generation dragon slayer off of Acnologia's typing. And based on what we've seen, and I think it only makes sense that the more powerful the dragon, the more potent the increase would be. So it's like, the strongest dragon, you're just going to be fast tracking yourself up. So it's like, is she possessed? Is she a dragon slayer now? I'm very curious as to what exactly is going to be going on with this. Because this is a plot point I didn't really foresee. I foresaw, and I guess I didn't talk about it too much. I foresaw Ferris, and I can't say one is I can't say foresaw. I had the theories that Ferris was going to come back at some point and be relevant to the plot, just because I felt like her character kind of got left on like a strange-ish note. And then the same thing with Athena. I think it's like, okay, Athena is with Eleftheria. I know a lot of people, including myself, are very suspicious of Eleftheria. So it's like, okay, well, what if she gets into a spot that's going to be dangerous for her? Or what if the whole idea of Eleftheria having some connection, in defiance of the dragon gods, maybe he's connected to Acnologia or maybe Ignia. Well, actually, I feel like it wouldn't make sense with Ignia possibly now if he's connected to her, because I think it would make sense that he's willing to put people through like rough. I want to say like rough tasks in order to get the job done. Like he's one of those guys that I feel like would be like any means necessary to get the mission accomplished. Like if we see, he made Ferris eat Acnologia's arm. He's got reprogrammed Athena so she's just a weapon with no emotions. You got Mercphobia who's just a rampaging animal and he's got control over him. If you line those things up and then you have him as this extra boss, I think it'd be really cool, and it would also be telling of his character. Because with Selene and Selene's character, and I'm trying really hard to get this going without like saying it in a way that I'm going to end up ranting. For Selene's character with Eleftheria, it was important to show, despite the clear like good guy mad guy way that it, you would think that it would be set with my cat. Or like at that point very early, like just the way that it's depicted, you think, oh yeah, for sure the dragon god is going to be the bad guy, Eleftheria is going to be the good guy. And once you got to those interactions between Eleftheria and Selene, it's very clear that Selene, obviously in self-defense, was just defending herself. And when you look at their interactions and the way that they've been behaving, in a lot of ways, Eleftheria seems more like the monster. And with Ignia, I think that'd be really cool too. It's like, despite Ignia's history, his connection with his guildmates, his plot points, and like whether good or bad, it's like you look at them and you're like, okay, well I can see more of a balanced character. Whereas Eleftheria, again, if it turns out he's way more again of a monster than the guy who's supposed to be the monster, I think that would be really cool and telling for him. And on top of that, I think that would be really good for the overall story, like story narrative of Fairy Tail. If you have this super powerful dragon god, you have all these things that is like lined up like, this is why he's bad, and it's like he's bad in a different way, but not the way that you were told and described. And then the person that you thought was the good guy and is supposed to be a human against these dragons who are supposed to be the threat is like way more of a problem. And I think that would be really cool because it would play more into that idea that it's not a species thing, it's a person thing. Because you could have a dragon be like, never bothers anybody, never hurts anybody, maybe they're nice to people, and they never do one bad thing their whole life, and then people just want to accuse them of crimes or be like, oh, he's gonna murder all these people. It's a dragon. And then you could have a guy who's just like, it does heinous crimes all the time, be evil, kill people, kidnap people, do whatever. And then it's like all you have to do is like put up a good enough a front, and people, there are people that just assume that they're good just based off of like stuff like, oh, this guy, he grew up in my town, I've known him for a long time, I've never seen him do anything bad. Or like, oh, this guy, he he seems really friendly, why would a human of this area do this? You know what I mean? Where it's like they just come up with excuses, and then it's like, well, like this dragon has been here for 80 years and he's never had a problem with us, and suddenly like people are saying he's like eating a sheep, but we don't have any proof. It's like you look at certain things and you can see where the contrasting point of like, yeah, it's not a human dragon or demon or Machias actually shown besides Wall.
it's more of like what it comes down to the individual, because there's nothing inherently about being a dragon or being a human that makes you evil. It's about the actions of the being taking them. It just ends up sometimes like, obviously being a different species, being way older. There are factors in there that could make that viewpoint warped and distorted. But as it were, like the whole bit about Ferris and Acnologia, very interesting, like monkey wrench thrown into this arc. What exactly it's gonna do with that, I don't know. I would love to see like Natsu kind of like almost have to be put in a backseat for a minute. I think it'd be really cool if we had like a bad guy fight. We had Ferris and Ignia actually just get into a scuffle. Just like maybe like a chapter where they brawl. Because like for me too, and I know I gotta wrap it up. I'm already at 20 something minutes, like 25 minutes. I was like, I want to make this video a little shorter. With Diablos, not specifically Diablos, but Celine. Celine being on the protagonist side, I thought like there has to be something that balances her out. Because say it's like you take Celine and Ignia, you put them against each other, you say, Celine, don't get distracted this time. You don't have to beat him, you just have to stalemate him. Because then if you have all of Diablos, all of Fairy Tail, and like any other allies that may pop up somehow, Sting and Rogue, maybe they'll come back. I would imagine, at least off of right now, Diablo's Fairy Tail and combined would beat the Fire and Flames members if you take Ignia out, because obviously Ignia is their by far strongest person. But as of right now, the only person in their guild that seems not unbeatable, but it's like that to defeat them, there's gonna have to be a lot of effort going into it, like new form, new attack, power-ups, whatever, is Wed. Because like the Signario sisters, they're impressive. We don't know realistically to the extent because we haven't seen them actually fight with the real powers. Brian, Lekka, like they seem capable, but I don't think that they're gonna be as like insane, obviously, as Wed. I don't think there's anything that indicates that. And then Raj, obviously, Raj was like a damn illusionist. And I guess if you count Misfortune, but Misfortune, Firecat. But anyway, other than that, this was a solid chapter. I thought this chapter was really good. Like I said, the bits that I looked at and I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Like this is stuff that I've talked about, and I'm like, yeah, awesome, fantastic. This is great. I just love that things are moving in a logical way and they're connecting at a point that shows that obviously, like Mishima remembers his story. It's not like he forgot about what the Dragon King Festival was. And then like the whole bit at the end, I just really liked like the weird Ferris plot twist, just because I didn't see that coming. I don't know where that's gonna be. I really love the idea that Elisaria's like he's kept this arm and he ends up like convincing to feed Ferris or forces or something. Or maybe it's like Acnologia's like existence that lived in the space between time took her over or something. Also, it's just like an extra thing, because I forgot to mention one thing about Acnologia's arm. It's not as relevant, but it's one of those things where you could tell there's a maybe. It's a small plot point. I'm sure that there are people, obviously, if you get this point, you might have noticed. Maybe you haven't, you want to go back and look. There are parts when Acnologia's missing arm is like formed in almost like a vapor or like a mist. He's got like this weird shadowy cloak arm. Because like I'm sure anybody's seen like there are parts when it's like he's flying and it's like there's this weird stuff leaking out of his arm, but there's a few parts where it forms, and I'm wondering if like maybe it's like that like it's an indication of like Acnologia and like the soul manipulation we know he had but we never really saw too much of, where maybe he was able to figure out a way to survive, and it's because like that was like one of those plot points where, like, oh well, Mishima was going to do something with this weird ghost arm and then didn't because he wanted to move things around. He had 100 years quest going, so he could eat at Zero, which rest in peace, eat at Zero. Crazy to think it's been 6 years, but either way, I can't wait to see how this all plays out. I can't wait to see what exactly is going to be going on with this. I wanted to see a little bit more of Wed and Urza, but it makes sense of why they like their fight wouldn't continue, especially like when it's very clear Urza is not at the moment going to win that. And just the stuff with the Ferris is so strange. It's really odd. Like it's one of those bits of, like I don't think anybody really has like I'm sure that like there might be something that like was like nodded at, but like maybe not. Maybe this is one of those pop points where it's just Mishima wanted you to completely be out of nowhere blindsided and this was gonna just always come out a complete shocker, and then maybe once it's explained, we're gonna get a little bit more detail. Because like, this is the last thing. This is the last thing I'll mention. I know I say that, but when it comes to something like this, and the reason I think it's really surprising is, at least for me, maybe somebody's already figured this out, but for me, I think of it more of like, well, what's happened recently to make this into the story, or even like 100 Years Quest. That's why I think it might be something that influenced this event from pre 100 Years Quest. And I think that would be really cool just because for the story, I think it'd be really neat to see like how exactly does this bit happen. It's cool when you see like, oh well, you know, somebody explains it and then you go back and you reread the part where it's supposed to have occurred and you're like, you know now that this part is going to trigger something way later on, which I think is just really neat. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos, and tell me what your thoughts are about this chapter. Like I said, if this video can get to 35 likes in my next video I record after that, I will I'll grab one of those little tiny kittens. I'll grab one of the ones that has their eyes open. Maybe I'll just grab all 3. Yeah, if I can get to 50, I'll grab all 3. But there's gonna be some people in there and be like, fuck, I wanna see these cats. But I don't imagine everybody's gonna make it to the very end. For the people that make it to the very end, if you want to see a kitten in the video, they're very cute. They got this tiny little triangle here. Anyway, whatever. I don't need to rant. I legit could easily fall into a 5-minute rant talking about these cats. Nice. But anyway, next chapter is gonna be hype. I feel like there's nobody that's gonna look at the ending of this chapter and say like, yeah, I'm not interested. And you're like, yeah, it's gonna be really cool because like the wet stuff concluded for now, and then it's like, yeah, something completely even more so unexpected. Let's figure out what's going on with this. Anyway, like I said, comment below, thumbs up the video for like, subscribe and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and thank you for listening.